Hello, I'm David Hughes. Welcome to Your Perfect Body, the podcast of the Esoteric Teaching community. Today's selection is entitled Life Passages, where we continue our commentary on the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The next verse is, as the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. Now just think of this. Remember when you were a child and you had a small body. Well, where is that body? You say, well, I still have the same body. No, you don't. Scientists tell us that every 7 years, every molecule and every cell in our bodies are replaced. So the body you have now is not the body you had when you were 3 years old. Unless you happen to be 5 years old right now, but I think most of our listeners are probably older than that. So that body is gone. And the body you have now is different. So why do you still think you're the same person? Because you are the same soul. You have the same consciousness, the same identity. You are the same person. Person equals soul. But the body is simply an arrangement of material elements. The only reason it appears alive is because of the presence of the soul. As soon as the soul passes from this body at death, the body is finished. So how is it that the same person is present in this body, an adult body, that was present in the body of the child? Because the soul doesn't change. Remember, the soul is eternal. Eternal means does not change. Anything that changes, anything that transforms from one form or one state into another is material. Think about that for a while. It's very, very important. This is the centerpiece of our spiritual philosophy. That which changes is material. That which remains the same age after age, the eternal truths, the absolute truth, that is spiritual. So the culture of spirituality begins with the absolute truth. We are reading from Gita because Gita is just absolute truth from one end to the other. And what's the criterion of absolute truth? Absolute truth never changes. It's true today, tomorrow, and 1,000,000 years from now. You could say that absolute truth is that truth which is true for every being, in every place, in every condition of life, for all eternity. So, we are becoming specialists in understanding the absolute truth. That is the process of learning the esoteric teaching, and applying the esoteric teaching is a process of mysticism. But we're not there yet. We're just beginning this process. And in the beginning there's some knowledge involved. The knowledge is that the soul is eternal and remains the same as the body changes. Similarly, the soul passes out of this body and into another body at death. Well then, if the soul is permanent and eternal, why don't we remember our previous body? And the answer is that the mind is also part of the body. The mind changes, doesn't it? Some people's mind changes all the time. But similarly, the example we used, the mind that you had when you were 3 years old is very different from the mind that you have now. So, what is it that's changing? It's a collection of thoughts, impressions, and logical processes facilitated by the human brain. So therefore it's part of the body. consciousness, the soul, that never changes. So the self-realized soul, someone who knows who they really are, someone who knows what they really are, is not bewildered by such a change. They don't become confused. They don't become overwhelmed. When the soul passes into another body, it's just another change of the body, just like the change in body from boyhood to youth to old age. Don't worry about it. Why? Because you're going to survive. You're eternal. And the next verse, Krishna says, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer. They arise from sense perception, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. And we all know people who, the minute something happens, good or bad, fly off the handle and go ballistic and just have to express it and tell it to the world, and they get all stirred up about it. And we also know people who are more stoic and who aren't so affected by the different conditions of life, because these things happen. This is the law of nature. Life has its ups and downs. It has moments of great happiness and terrific distress. But because all of those things are due to sense perception at the material body, they're impermanent. They come and go, like the seasons. As one gets older, you hear this from all of us old people, the time seems to fly by. It seemed like just the other day it was summer and now it's winter. And what happened to my middle age when I was running around and partying? That's gone. It seems just like yesterday. But now it's changed. This will happen to you if you live long enough. It'll happen to everyone. So there's not something to be upset about. Because why? These perceptions of happiness and distress, pain and pleasure, heat and cold, winning and losing, advancement and catastrophe, progress and falling down, these are all aspects of our sense perception. They're aspects of our ontology. We are looking for qualities like enjoyment. We're looking for progress. So when those factors arise, as they do in the crapshoot of the material world, we say, oh yes, I have done it. I'm successful. And then when they go away, we think, oh, what a disaster, now I'm finished. But actually, these are just the influence of the senses. They're the influence of our expectations. They're the influence of the type of consciousness that we are cultivating, the type of ontology that we have cultivated. If we cultivate a different ontology, then things are going to look different. Remember, we said that one's ontology pretty much creates one's consciousness. So if we look at it this way, that we're just in this body for a season, and after we leave this body, we'll be in another body. Well, what kind of body is that going to be? It depends on our ontology. This is the more advanced course of the esoteric teaching. Once we put ourselves into relationship with spiritual things instead of material things, we begin to change our ontology. Well, how exactly do we change it? We change it by changing our beliefs. When you change your belief, you start looking differently. You start observing from a different point of view. And that's the whole point. Therefore, Krishna says, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from material existence. Really, we want to get out of this material existence because the contact of the eternal spirit soul with the temporary material world is the source of all suffering. We don't want to suffer, therefore we want to get out of here. So how do we get out of here? By not being disturbed by happiness and distress, and being steady in both. Well, what does that mean, steady? It means we don't change our point of view. When so-called happiness comes along, we don't get all out of hand and pop the champagne and go crazy. And when distress comes, we don't go ballistic and get angry and start blaming everyone. We remain steady.